We often associate growth with visible action, big announcements, constant updates, and external validation. But the truth is, the most meaningful growth rarely happens in the spotlight. It happens in the quiet moments away from noise, distraction, and applause. Think about the times in your life when you truly changed. It wasn't when everyone was watching. It wasn't when you were explaining your plans or seeking approval. It was in the moments when you were alone, thinking, struggling, learning, and slowly improving. Growth in its purest form is deeply personal. And because it is personal, it requires space, it requires silence. Silence is not emptiness, it is focus. It is the environment where clarity begins to form. When you remove the constant chatter of opinions, comparisons, and expectations, you create room to understand yourself better. You begin to hear your own thoughts instead of the world's noise. And that's where real progress starts. In a noisy world, it's easy to confuse activity with progress. Posting about your goals, talking about your ambitions, and seeking validation can feel productive, but often it's just a distraction. True growth doesn't need to be announced. It doesn't need to be seen to be real. In fact, the more you protect your process, the more powerful it becomes. There is strength in working quietly. When you are not focused on proving yourself to others, you can fully invest in improving yourself. You become less concerned with how things look and more committed to how things actually are. That shift from appearance to reality is where transformation happens. Quiet growth also builds resilience. When no one is watching, your motivation has to come from within. You learn discipline. You learn consistency. You learn how to keep going without external rewards. And those are the qualities that sustain long-term success. Consider how nature works. A tree does not grow overnight, and it does not grow loudly. Its roots develop deep beneath the surface, unseen and unnoticed. But those roots are what give it strength, stability, and the ability to rise. Without that quiet, invisible growth, there would be nothing to see above ground. The same is true for you. If you constantly seek attention during your journey, you risk weakening your foundation. But if you embrace the quiet, if you allow yourself to grow without needing recognition, you build something far more solid. So don't be afraid of silence. Don't mistake it for lack of progress. Sometimes silence is a sign that you are doing the real work, the kind that doesn't need to be explained, only experienced. Because one day the growth that happened in quiet will become visible. And when it does, it won't need an introduction. It will speak for itself. Every single day, you wake up with a limited amount of energy. Not just physical energy, but mental energy, emotional energy, and focus. And whether you realize it or not, you are constantly deciding where that energy goes. The question is, are you investing it or are you spending it? Because there's a difference. Many of us spend our energy reacting to what others say, what others think, and what others are doing. We get pulled into comparisons, into opinions, into unnecessary conversations that drain us more than they develop us. And by the end of the day, we feel exhausted, not because we moved forward, but because we gave too much of ourselves to things that didn't matter. Energy is one of your most valuable resources. Once it's gone, you don't get it back. And yet, we often give it away freely to criticism, to distractions, to people who are not contributing to our growth. Focusing on yourself means becoming intentional about where your energy goes. It means asking yourself, is this helping me grow? Is this moving me forward? Or is this just noise? Because not everything deserves your attention. And not everyone deserves your response. When you start protecting your energy, something powerful happens. You begin to reclaim control. You stop reacting and start choosing. You stop chasing and start building. And most importantly, you stop seeking validation from the outside. The need for approval is one of the biggest drains on your energy. Trying to prove yourself to others, trying to fit into expectations, trying to meet standards that were never yours to begin with, it's exhausting. And it takes you further away from who you actually are. But when you shift your focus inward, that changes. You no longer need to explain your path to people who don't understand it. You no longer feel the urge to respond to every opinion. You become selective. You become intentional. You become focused. And that focus multiplies your energy. Instead of being scattered across distractions, your energy is directed toward your goals, your growth, and your purpose. You start making real progress, not because you're doing more, but because you're wasting less. There is also a quiet confidence that comes with this. When you know where your energy is going, you don't feel the need to prove anything. You're not looking for attention. You're building something meaningful. And building requires energy. So protect it. Be mindful of the conversations you engage in. Be aware of the thoughts you entertain. Be selective about what you give your time and attention to. Because at the end of the day, your life is shaped by where your energy goes. If you give it to distractions, you will feel stuck. If you give it to growth, you will move forward. It's that simple. So stop giving your energy to everything and everyone. Start investing in yourself. Because when you do, you'll realize something important. You already have enough energy to succeed. You just needed to use it wisely. We live in a time where it's easy to talk about what we're going to do. We share our plans, our goals, our ambitions. We announce the next move before we even take the first step. And in that moment, it feels good. It feels like progress. But it's not, because talking about success and building success are two very different things. Words create intention, but results create impact. And the truth is, the world doesn't remember what you said you would do. It remembers what you actually did. There is a subtle trap in constantly expressing your goals. Every time you talk about your plans, you get a small sense of satisfaction, as if you've already achieved something. But that feeling can be misleading. It can slow you down. It can replace action with the illusion of progress. That's why staying silent is powerful. When you choose not to announce every step, you remove the temptation to perform. You shift your focus from appearing productive to actually being productive. You stop working for reactions and start working for results. Because results don't need promotion. They don't need explanation. They don't need justification. They speak. Think about the people you truly respect, the ones who inspire you. It's rarely because of what they say about themselves. It's because of what they've done. Their work, their discipline, their consistency, those are the things that earn attention, not noise. There's also a level of freedom in letting your results speak. When you're not constantly explaining your journey, you're not tied to other people's expectations. You're not pressured to meet timelines you announced. You're not distracted by opinions that don't align with your vision. You simply focus and execute. And execution requires silence. It requires long hours of unseen effort. It requires showing up when no one is watching. It requires doing the work even when there's no immediate recognition. Because real results take time. They are built slowly, step by step, decision by decision. And during that process, there may be no applause, no acknowledgement, no visible reward. But that doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is happening beneath the surface. The danger of talking too much is that you invite unnecessary noise into your process. Opinions, doubts, distractions, they start to surround you. And instead of focusing on your path, you start reacting to others. But when you stay silent, you protect your vision. You give yourself the space to grow without interference. You allow your actions to be intentional, not reactive. And over time, those actions begin to compound. Until one day, the results become impossible to ignore. And when that moment comes, you won't need to explain anything. You won't need to convince anyone, because the work will already have done that for you. So speak less about what you plan to do and do more of what actually matters. Because in the end, words may capture attention for a moment, but results earn respect for a lifetime. Most people spend their lives trying to understand the world around them, but very few take the time to truly understand themselves. And yet everything begins there. Because if you don't know who you are, what drives you, what distracts you, what strengthens you, you will always depend on the world to define you. And the world is inconsistent. It changes its opinions, its standards, its expectations. Self-awareness changes that. It gives you a foundation that doesn't shift based on external noise. When you focus on yourself, you begin to notice patterns. You start to recognize what drains your energy and what fuels it. You understand your strengths, not just what you're good at, but what you can rely on under pressure. And more importantly, you become honest about your weaknesses, not to judge yourself, but to improve. That honesty is where power begins, because you cannot grow what you are not aware of. Many people avoid this step. It's uncomfortable. It requires you to confront things you might prefer to ignore, your habits, your excuses, your limitations. But without that clarity, any progress you make will be temporary. Self-awareness gives direction to your effort. Without it, you might work hard, but in the wrong direction. You might chase goals that don't align with who you are. You might build a life that looks successful from the outside, but feels empty on the inside. But when you know yourself, your actions become intentional. You stop trying to be everything to everyone. You stop chasing paths that were never meant for you. You start making decisions based on clarity, not confusion. And that clarity brings confidence. Not the loud kind that seeks attention, but the quiet kind that doesn't need validation. The kind that allows you to walk into any situation knowing who you are without needing to prove it. Staying silent plays a critical role in this, because self-awareness requires reflection, and reflection requires space. If you are constantly surrounded by noise, opinions, conversations, distractions, you never give yourself the opportunity to think deeply. You react instead of reflect. You follow instead of understand. But when you embrace silence, you create that space. You begin to listen, not to the world, but to yourself. And in that process, you discover something important. You don't need constant guidance from others when you can guide yourself. This doesn't mean you stop learning from people. It means you stop depending on them to define you. You become grounded, and when you are grounded, you are not easily shaken. Criticism doesn't break you. Praise doesn't distract you. You remain steady, focused, and clear. That's power. Because in a world full of noise and confusion, the person who understands themselves has an advantage that cannot be easily taken away. So take the time to know yourself. Pay attention to your thoughts, your actions, your patterns. Be honest, even when it's uncomfortable. Because the more you understand yourself, the more control you gain over your life. And when you have that control, you don't need to be loud. Your clarity will guide you. Your confidence will ground you. And your self-awareness will quietly set you apart. We live in a world that rewards attention. Likes, views, comments, recognition, it's everywhere. And over time, it begins to shape how we think. We start to believe that being seen is the same as being successful. But it's not. Attention is temporary. Discipline is lasting. The problem is, attention feels good in the moment. It gives you a quick sense of validation. It makes you feel like you're moving forward, like you're being recognized. But discipline? Discipline is quiet. It doesn't give you instant rewards. It asks you to show up again and again without applause. And that's why most people struggle with it. Because it's easier to chase attention than it is to build discipline. It's easier to post about your goals than it is to work on them consistently. It's easier to talk about success than it is to earn it through daily effort. And over time, this creates a gap a gap between what you say you want and what you're actually willing to do. Discipline closes that gap. When you choose discipline, you're choosing long-term growth over short-term validation. You're deciding that your progress matters more than people's opinions. You're committing to the process, even when it's repetitive, even when it's slow, even when no one notices. And that's where real change happens. Because success is not built in moments of attention. It's built in moments of consistency. It's built in the early mornings when no one is watching, in the late nights when no one is encouraging you, in the decisions you make daily, whether to stay focused or to get distracted. Discipline is what keeps you moving when motivation fades. And motivation always fades. It comes and goes depending on how you feel. But discipline doesn't rely on feelings. It relies on commitment. And commitment is a choice you make every single day. Staying silent supports this choice. Because when you are not chasing attention, you remove unnecessary pressure. You stop performing for others. You stop measuring your progress based on reactions. Instead, you measure it based on effort, consistency, and improvement. You begin to build a routine, not for recognition, but for results. And over time, that routine becomes your strength. There's also a level of patience that comes with discipline. You understand that meaningful progress takes time. You don't rush the process. You don't get discouraged by slow results. You trust that every small step is contributing to something bigger. That trust is powerful because it allows you to keep going when others stop. Most people quit when they don't see immediate results. They lose interest when the attention fades. But the disciplined ones, they continue quietly, consistently, without needing recognition. And eventually, that consistency sets them apart. So don't chase attention. It's loud, it's temporary, and it can distract you from what truly matters. Instead, choose discipline. Choose to show up, even when it's hard. Choose to stay focused, even when it's boring. Choose to keep going, even when no one is watching. Because in the end, attention might bring you a moment, but discipline will build you a future. And that future will speak louder than anything you could ever say. In the end, the message is simple, but not easy. Focus on yourself. Protect your energy. Stay silent when it matters. Because real growth doesn't need an audience, it needs commitment. When you stop seeking attention, you start building discipline. When you stop explaining, you start executing. When you turn inward, you discover the clarity and strength you've been looking for all along. Let others talk while you work. Let others doubt while you improve. Because one day, without saying a word, your results will tell your story, and they will say everything that needs to be said.